Welcome to Podcast Answers, the show where I help people start and grow their podcast, answering any questions along the way. Guys, if you've not checked out the last episode, I talked about Podgagement with Daniel Lewis. This week, I have another guest from another podcasting service. I have Todd from Blubrry on with me talking about some of the things that they're doing in the podcasting space, and it's talking about their new AI product and some other podcasting 2.0 things. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this episode right now. With me today, I have Todd Cochrane from Blubrry. Todd, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So you guys have been doing all sorts of things at Blubrry for Podcasting 2.0. I talked to you several episodes ago about the podcast mirror service that you guys have had implemented and created and allowed to non-podcasting 2.0 hosts, people that are hosts on non-compliant hosts, to add tags and things. But you've done so much more recently. Can you tell me a little bit about? Let's start with Vid2Pod. That's a pretty exciting service, and tell me what it is.
Yeah, and actually, my stats report came up today, and we were actually blown away by the number of customers that have signed up for it. It was about 5 times what we thought it was going to be. But Vid2Pod is kind of as it sounds, and it really was an idea that was generated from talking with YouTubers at PodFest who said, I don't have time for a podcast. And, and they were kind of like, I'm busy building my channel. And we came back home and we talked about that. And my CFO, Barry Kant, said, hey, can't beat them, join them. Why don't we make it easy for a YouTuber to have a podcast? So that's what we really did. We did integration where a person signs up, they link to their YouTube channel, they pick a playlist. And if they want, we'll pull in all their old episodes, or we'll just start at a certain date. And what we do is we pull down those media files, and then we convert them to audio, and we auto-publish. We utilize their title and their metadata from their description to pre-populate those 2 fields in their episode. And basically, it's a set and forget it. So it basically reduces the amount of time someone that has number one, the first people that took off on this was people that are already doing double work.
Sure.
People that were posted on YouTube, then coming over, and now we're getting from the list that I'm looking at, we're getting peer YouTubers are coming over, and basically now they've got an audio podcast that's available via the normal distribution channels with an RSS feed. So we're pretty that was the goal here, was to make it easy for YouTubers to have a true technical podcast.
That's awesome, because I think I've heard you guys talk about it before, and we both agree a YouTube video is not a podcast. But you've said it before yourself. When you talk to people, they're surprised when you say, show me an Apple Podcast where your podcast is at," and they don't even know they don't even know. So this really allows them to be able to take their YouTube video and automatically create a MP3 out of it and host it with you and create a true podcast. That's definitely a really cool thing. Have you had much feedback about it? People love it?
Yeah, they love it, and what they're starting to realize is, oh, look what we've been missing. Because then you open them up to the ecosystem of everything that we've been doing with Podcasting 2.0 and this whole new audience. Because what we're really the sales messaging on this is, we want to grow your audience. We don't want to hurt your YouTube audience, but let's let that continue to thrive over there, and you do the YouTube strategy. And then on the podcast side, you can have a podcast strategy to be able to market to people, to a brand new audience. And there's only one really restriction in using the service, and it's something we go through pretty heavily when they sign up, is they can't bring any YouTube content that has any YouTube licensed music.
Okay.
So if you have any music in your show that you've gotten from YouTube, it's not legal to cross that over. And just because it's, that's where people are going to get in trouble.
Sure.
So it basically said, hey, if you have your own licensed music that you've gotten other places, number one, you need to check to make sure it covers podcasting. And number 2, if you're using YouTube Music, then it's a non-starter to begin with.
Gotcha. Yeah. So then they would just have to find some other licensed music, replace what they're using in the YouTube, from
Yep.
YouTube, but bring in their own licensed music. That's
Yeah.
that's cool. So so yeah, and then you've also been doing podcast AI or Pi, Blueberry Pie, which I love
Yeah.
the name, by the way. It's great. It's great. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, Blueberry Pie was actually, we were trying to figure out what we're gonna call this thing, and it's, podcast artificial intelligence assistant, or, it was, and Dave, one of our support guys said, "Why don't we just call this thing Blueberry Pie?" And we're like, "Oh, a star is born," right? But what we did is, really, it's a real targeted product. And we really thought hard about this over 6 months, and it was me and several other team members that were using ChatGPT, using Claude. We're using just about every product we could test, and it really is broken down into 3 components. One is planning. Basically, give me some ideas for a show on basket weaving or whatever the topic may
Sure.
be,
Yeah.
right? And if I'm gonna have a guest, let's preload the guest information, their bio, and a link to their LinkedIn page or wherever they have information about themselves. And then what we've done then is it generates really a couple of things. 10 potential questions that we allow them to add 10 topics for a specific show plan. And they can add their own if they want within that. Number 2, we come up with questions for their guest if they're going to have a guest, allow them to add more as well. And then finally, the planning project just spits out a kind of a show flow.
Sure.
And what we've told people is, with any AI product, this thing does not alleviate common sense. You need to
Sure.
read through and make sure everything is valid. But the tool that's getting the most used is the production tool. Basically, you've already done your editing, you've uploaded your audio to the platform. You can go in then and select that audio. We create a transcript that's contextual. You say it's Todd and Rob, or whoever's on the show.
Hmm.
You'd be able to pick the speakers, and then it will suggest 10 titles for the episode. It will go through and figure out. You also has to, in the production planning, have to say, kind of, here's what the main topic was,
Sure.
or maybe this is what I want you to lead with. So kind of you give it a little bit of a lead. And what I found is it gets about, on the titles of the episodes, it gets me about 50 to 75% there. So I'll see a title and say, okay, I like that, but I'm only going to use 3/4 of it. So I'll edit it and select it, or I'll add my own. Maybe I've already got a title in my mind. But the next section, we do an absolute fabulous summary, give them a second section of bullet points of topics that were covered.
Mm.
We create some episode art, and finally, we auto create chapters. And so for me, when I'm doing my tech show, I know I talk about 30 topics. So I said, I think there's going to be like 32, 33 topics. And it goes through, and it's really, really good at basically finding those breaks where you change topics. And for like the Podcast Insider show, we only talk about 3 or 4 things, and it usually comes up with about 5 chapters, which is about right.
Nice. Yeah.
And you can edit them, add your art, add links. So for those that are publishing on the dashboard at Blueberry and not using the WordPress PowerPress combination, what happens is every edit you make then changes a draft episode that we basically get ready. So if you're on the dashboard, once you're done with that production flow, you just go into the episode area and you'll see a draft there. You go episode draft, the title's in there, the summary's in there, the chapters file is linked, the transcript is linked, the media file is linked. All you have to do then is go in and do any small edits, any art, links that you want, any hyperlinks within the summary, do your editing, and bam, hit publish. And what we're hearing from the customers is I knew personally when I was using ChatGPT and Anthropic and all these other tools, I was spending like an extra hour
Yeah.
doing my show because I was using multiple tools for multiple things. And now I'm back out the door just as fast as I was in my old process with a richer metadata set. The folks, and even though I have to, because I'm on Blueberry's, I'm out using the PowerPress plugin with my WordPress site. We don't have a direct integration there yet. It's
Okay.
coming, where I basically have to copy and paste. I copy the title, copy the summary, copy over the chapters file. So I have to do a little bit extra work. But in the near future, what will happen is, as a PowerPress user, using the AI, you say, "I'm finished," and that will invoke a reaction that will send the data to your site, long as you've linked it,
Hmm.
and we'll pre-populate an episode or a post with as much data as we can. So, um,
That's definitely cool. I know for me, like the chaptering thing, like I want to make rich chapters, but it's so hard because you got to go back and
hard.
listen to the whole thing and try and figure out, if you have an hour show that where you have to go back. I mean, you kind of know where you talked about topics at, and you can kind of skip through, but it still takes that time to go ahead
Yeah.
and listen to your show, try to figure that out and get that. So that's the super handy feature. And like if you said, if it does a pretty good job at detecting when you're switching topics and where it should put chapters and stuff, that's a great thing.
And, it's one of those situations too where I have, Kirk, who's my dir basically executive director. He basically
Hmm.
pre-produces all the topics. He goes in a couple days later, and after he's listened to the show and written down, all the hash points, and he goes up and makes sure everything is matched up in the chapter file so that from longevity standpoint, everything is exactly where it should be, and he
Sure.
says it's about 90% correct. And he actually says it saves him time because sometimes he doesn't have time to listen to the show, but he'll jump
Oh,
to the
sure.
topic area, and then he'll say, "Yep, that's the marker. Let me put in the link," and he backfills. So that's the beauty too. And if you're a Blueberry customer, you can assign someone that will be able to come in and edit the chapters separately. You don't have to do it if you got a fan of the show that does it like
Oh,
many
nice.
do. Yeah, and the same thing in WordPress, really. All you have to do is give someone an account and give them the right privileges, and they can get in there and do the editing, and we mirror it. So in other words, if you make a change in PowerPress where you edit the chapter, it gets put back into the chapter JSON file that Blueberry's hosting. So it's
Okay.
it's a married situation, so you can edit on either side, and it works out well. So, and then the third piece is really kind of a social promotion piece. That's where we create clips, text clips only for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all those locations. And we also have the ability to create an email that you would send out to your audience about the episode. And here's a crazy thing that I really attest to, that's what's really happening with my personal show, is I used to just copy what I had in my posts from WordPress,
Mm.
and I used to paste that into an email and send it off. Well, people probably deleted 90% of those.
Sure.
And what I found now is because it's kinda I worked the hardest on this email because this thing kept running home to mama and wanting to be, like, flamboyant and making, it was really, I was not happy with the output, and it was like a battle. I think I probably did 150 prompt changes to get it right. So now it's got a good mix, and we've hopefully trained the model to make it understand that people who have subscribed to the newsletter know who I am or know who you are, and a little bit of the flavor of the show, and then ultimately it creates this pretty good email, and it's almost, I wouldn't say a comedian, but it feels like sometimes when I'm reading what is come up with, I kinda laugh. I still
Mhm.
have to edit it because sometimes you get something like, "No, I didn't say that. It run home to mama," and assume it, like, I was talking about an interview with the on my show last night about an interview with the CEO of Discord, and I didn't do the interview. It was done on another podcast. Yeah, it falsely assumed it was me, and I had to change that out, but probably in the whole platform, the weakest piece of it is the image creation
Okay.
because we often tell it, don't put any text
Sure.
in the image, and about 25% of the time it still does it, still runs home to mama. But again, I think we've used enough disclaimers in the site to say, hey, this is still early days, and the beauty of this is we build it internally and did the API calls. It's not that hard.
Mhm.
People just assume it is. It's really truly about not the scripts, but the prompts.
Mhm.
And, but we got some stuff coming. We got some ideas, but who knows?
Well,
This is fun stuff.
and as I've heard several times before, this is the early days of 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 artificial intelligence, but it's only gonna get better, right? I mean,
Yeah, we're we're
we see
using
it
the stupidest AI
right.
or language model we're using right now. This,
Right.
the
It does
dumbest.
some weird things. I mean, it sometimes puts multiple hands on people, but it's only going to get better. And it's not ever going to be a replacement for human, to do their whole job. Like I think
Yeah, yeah,
that's not
yeah,
going to
yeah.
work. But the way that you're using it and to be able to assist with the production of your show, that's a great thing because I know that, like, the more stuff that you do for your show, the longer it takes. If you just purely record an audio file and send it up to your media host, you can be done quickly. But if you're going to do all of the things like create show art and do the transcripts and all
Yep,
of that stuff, which helps your show look better, it ends up taking a lot longer. And your production ends up, like you said, doubling because you're doing all of this extra
yep.
stuff besides just the show. So that's really cool. Now, going back to your first thing that you included with the pie, you talked about it being able to suggest kind of a show flow and questions for your guest. Now, are you able to tell it who your guest is so that
Yeah,
it has some knowledge of that? Okay, cool.
yeah. It's in the planning tool. Basically, uh, we have a profile. So like Rob and I's show, it's I
Hmm.
always click Todd and Rob are here, and then what the topic, if we have a guest, what the topic that we're gonna cover. Then have the ability to put in either cut and paste a bio in or link to a LinkedIn page and put information about the guest so that when we process the questions that for the potential guest, I go out at LinkedIn, you use the topics and come up with stuff. And I'll say that from that standpoint, again, maybe 60, 70% solution. Some of the questions it comes up with is like, "Yeah, okay, that's dumb. I'm not going to use that." So you're able to select, and then we actually allow you to regenerate to come up with more questions if you don't find enough. And that's seemed to be pretty successful.
Awesome.
But ultimately, in the planning document, what we want to do is everyone does their show flow different, and we want to be able to have a templating system where you say, okay, I do an introduction, I talk about my guests, we get into, we want to be able to have people be able to set up a template so that their show, because we're giving them our show flow now.
Sure.
And people are saying, I gotta edit this thing. And I'm like, well, it's okay. It's there for you to use it. And it is a tool to assist you.
Right.
And some people say, well, it got me over writer's block, which was podcaster's block. They said,
Hmm.
oh, came up with a whole bunch of new ideas. And to be honest with you, you can go to Chat GPT and say, I'm going to have a guest on a podcast that is going to be blah, 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 with this as a topic. Give me 20 questions, and it'll do that for you.
Hmm.
But what I found, and talking about time, I don't have time, and I hate wasting time. I don't edit my show, and I know that
Right.
goes against the grain for many people, but I wanted to, as soon as I hit stop, I wanna be walking out the door in 45 minutes, and when I
Hmm.
was doing all this manually, it was like 90 minutes, but now I'm back to, actually, I'm saving time.
Hmm.
I'm actually getting the show out quicker, with much richer metadata. And going back to that email we send, my listeners who, I got this huge mailing list, 16, 17, or 18 years worth of mailing list.
Yeah.
And they're saying, hey, we're reading your emails now. And what I've actually seen is audience members come back and new members coming in because the show notes are richer. Even though I was preaching, hey, have 2, 3 paragraphs of rich show notes, I was lazy like everyone else. I didn't always
Right.
do that, right? So now I have this big chunk of metadata that Google can just slurp up, and so it's I'm seeing increases in audience numbers that I have not seen in many, many years.
Hmm.
And maybe it's audience members purely coming back from the email.
Sure.
But regardless, hey, we're going to take it, right? If they're coming back or if they're new, you take any growth you can get.
Right. Well, and to be honest, like this the reason that we get into podcasting is because we like the actual audio and actually talking and things like that. It's not the actual post production work that most
Right.
of us like doing. Right. I'm of the same way. I like to hit stop and be done. And so this brings back the joy to podcasting because it allows you to do that extra stuff without having to do the extra stuff or
And when I,
do as much.
and when I get a ten paragraph summary of the show, and I drop it into my template that I have for my episode already, and I read it through, and again, it's really just, okay, that wasn't right, that was right. Let's change this word and tie that in with Grammarly. Oh, it's a beautiful product, you know.
Yeah.
And some stuff has to be changed. There's always one or two things that it didn't get quite right. But again, it's trying to take contextual. what's in the transcript and say, based upon here's the show topic. This is, so again, we're using the dumbest large, and I don't like to call it AI yet, really, even though we call it
Right.
podcast AI assistant, because it's truly just a language model at this point.
Hmm.
And we're nowhere near, well, we'll see how long it takes to get to AGI, but time will tell. But for me, this is fun stuff. It makes podcasts, I've been in this almost 20 years. So,
Right.
it's like the podcasting 2.0 stuff. Oh my God, I'm excited.
Hmm.
And some of the stuff that's been talked about recently is exciting for us because we're really trying to think about how do we keep this engagement going, because in the end, if you have listeners engaged and whatever they're doing, if they're sending a boost, or if they're sending a cross app comments post, or if they're emailing the show, those little itty bitty tiny things keeps a podcaster, even me,
Oh yeah.
motivated to keep doing your show. If someone says, "Oh my God, the takeaway from your show was, I got X, Y, and Z out of this. Thank you." That that drives you for another 3 months.
It
It
does.
really does. So it's those small things that and I think if you're a podcaster listening to this, we have to really work really, really hard on making sure we're coming up with solutions to get our audiences engaged.
Sure. Do you have any future plans for the podcast, the Blueberry Pie that you are working on currently that you can talk about now?
Yeah, the clip creator, we publicly talked about that. It's actually starts beta testing next week. I've got some other stuff coming. I don't really want to go too
Sure.
deep in it.
Yep.
And here's the thing, I had one idea that I came up with, and we had a meeting about it. And about 20 minutes in, I said, well, big X mark through, because it
Yeah.
it really wasn't viable. I'll just say this. We want to really, our goal over the past couple of years is, how do I grow my show? And because that's the question I get asked 100% of the time when I'm doing one-on-ones with podcasters is, how do I grow my show?
Yeah.
And, usually I can go to their website and say, okay, here's 10 changes to make on your website to get you started. But in the end, I think we have to go much further beyond just updating your .com to make you more viable and findable on Google. We need to have this ability to give podcasters actionable things that they can do to change their show. One of the stats we added was tracking, basically doing an ABCDE comparison of different episodes. So if, let's say I talked about water bottles on one, and I talked about Mountain Dew on the other. How did those track with the audience? How did they grow? What was the
Okay.
topic that more resonated? So it's that kind of stuff. Now it's not AI. That's just pure stats data.
Right.
And so we're really looking at, I guess for a better word is, where do I have holes? Starting A to Z. I'm doing this, 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 and this to help a podcaster now, but where's the hole? Where's a hole where I'm missing something that will help a podcaster? So if that gives you any clue, I'm looking at those holes to see where I can fill stuff. And number
Sure.
two, and this is probably going to make some people that compete with us with auxiliary products, if you're spending a lot of money on a third party product that's basically helping your podcast, I'm going to try to fill that hole as part of a basic hosting plan.
Awesome. So,
Uh,
the Blueberry Pie, is that part of the basic hosting plan, or is that an addition, or
it's
how does that work
it's
for
par-
you?
it's part of Thrive, and
Okay.
it's a whole host. The Thrive package is $10 additional a month, but it's a whole host of additional items. I think we were up to 7 or 8. So we keep throwing stuff into Thrive to make Thrive
Sure.
more valuable. And at some point, I'm gonna say, "When am I gonna stop adding stuff to that?" Because, I'm looking at the cost, because this AI stuff is, what really costs the most is the image generation.
Sure.
That is the most expensive part of the whole query. But yeah, we're looking at anything where and hopefully, the most of the stuff that I'm able to add will be part of the baseline price. If I do an integration with, let's say, Adobe, I'm probably gonna have to charge for that, unless I can get such a great deal through a third party that integration, I can make those numbers work.
Sure.
In the end, really, our biggest challenge is getting most of these brand new podcasters episode one, because we still have people sign up for service, and we're watching a report, and 10, 15, 20 days, we're like, hey, do you need a hand? Do you need an assist? And it
Hmm.
goes dark. And at 30 days, they cancel because maybe they figured out, okay, this is too hard or I wasn't ready. So our goal is really to help that podcaster get to episode one. And I think that's from a I think if you talk to any hosting provider, that probably is where the highest churn rate is. Once they start, you get to maybe episode 6 or 7, I can almost guarantee that
Yeah,
podcast is gonna be around for a while.
yeah, they'll
But
keep doing their show.
yeah, but, you don't get to that number. Yeah, they're 90 days, they're done.
Yeah.
And if you so ultimately, and people are at a point today where they just want instant gratification, and, I think there's a lot of people out there selling strategies that says, "We'll get you to X number of listeners and, some amount of time and give me $5,000 to do it," and people are frankly, that's probably not a good strategy,
Mm-hmm.
from a money standpoint. So, we wanna make sure we're having tools in there that, they're not going to have to go out and spend that money to have a third party help them with a variety of things.
Sure. Now, moving on to other podcasting 2.0 related things, you guys went gangbusters and added a bunch of stuff before, and we talked a little bit about that last time you were on, and we talked about the podcast mirror service. But is there anything that you're adding new, either recently or going to be adding here in the future?
Well, as soon as they formalize the next round, we'll look at all that and figure out where we're gonna drop. We'll add stuff as they add it. I tell you what I'm really excited about is this, what are they calling it? Satoshi backs or something,
Oh,
sat
the
backs
I don't know that there's an official name, but yes, where you can send it back to the
y
listener, like from an
to the listener.
advertiser or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, to me, that makes sense because I'm thinking to myself, "Okay, what I've been doing now has been telling any of my listeners, you go on Fountain, get the Fountain app, and send me your Fountain address. I'll send you sats to prime the pump. I'll send you
Hmm.
sats. You don't have to put your credit card down or nothing. You can use that to give that to any show that you want, just as an education standpoint to try to get people moving. But it makes it a lot easier if I can say, okay, you listen to, Podcast Insider, you listen to the New Media Show, you listen to Geekness Central, and you listen for that 60 minutes, you're going to earn 4 or 5,000 sats. I think people would say, oh, and over time, that's real money.
Hmm.
And they can use that whatever way they want. But to be honest with you, I think Adam kind of hit upon it a little bit in a recent show is I just want people to be able to put a fiat amount somewhere. Put
Yeah.
$20 on account, and then this magically happens, and then they can magically get their money out.
Hmm.
We have to figure out a way because there's still crypto stigmatism. Even though,
There is, yeah, and
yeah,
I think Sam at True Fans has started doing that as far as buying the sets. You're able to do like Apple Pay or Google Pay
right,
and do that. And I think that when you're essentially saying I'm going to buy what we're calling like the fairground tokens, where you're not
yep,
actually thinking of it
yep,
as crypto
yep. I
and
call it
and
tokens too. Yeah,
right. If you associate that where you put your amount of USD or wherever you're at in, and you get these tokens that you can pass out however you want, then it takes this whole like it takes that away, and it makes it a lot easier to do, as opposed to having to go over to another one app and then show a QR
yep,
code to the other app. And it's fine for geeks like you and I, but for
yep.
everyday listeners it doesn't work real well.
And it's kinda like the Dave& and Buster's thing, you go in and, you power up your Dave& and Buster's card or whatever. I don't even know if they're still in business, but,
Yeah.
um, but in the end and same thing is if we do this sat backs thing where I can say, "Okay, you listen to the show, and we're gonna send you so many sats a minute, and I'll give you a bonus sats if you listen to the ad I have in my show," and I promote that back to an advertiser. That's it's beautiful, but the key is we gotta be able to get whatever sats we send to a listener to be able to easily extract them into their PayPal account
Yep.
or into whatever mechanism we use to get their cash back. We
Yeah.
wanna get them that cash back.
Well, and I think too that if we end up doing that, you're going to be able to prove better to the advertiser, this amount of people listen to your ad spot, as opposed to now where we're just kind of guessing and hoping. We can say we have this many downloads, but again, that doesn't equate to a listener necessarily. So yeah, I think that would be a good thing, because we can then make their advertising dollars worth it and go further.
But, also don't disregard what advertisers do.
No.
They'll say, "Okay, we're gonna give you, uh, whatever that sum is." Like for GoDaddy, they give me a sum each month. I have a
Mhm.
base, but you better bring us X number of new customers. They back that out
Oh, yeah.
into a cost per acquisition. So I get an email from GoDaddy say, "Hey, you hit your quota. Here's your performance for the month, and this is what you earned." Whereas if I'm under quota, they're gonna say, "Hey, we were under, so, you're gonna I get my base, but I get no bonus, and
Sure.
get busy next month." But if I can it opens up a whole realm of opportunity. Um, they're still gonna look at performance on money spent, but we'll
Sure.
have a better ability to say, "Did that person hit that 30-second advance button?" Or because 'cause I'm sure some of my audience has been in the show for years. As soon as I
Mhm.
hit the advertising spot, they go bang, bang. They hit the 30-second ahead twice,
Yep.
if it's available, I'm sure. But again, if I pay 'em to listen and talk about a new offer, then maybe they share that with a friend so it changes the dynamic a lot, especially I know I'm gonna get $1 or 50 cents or whatever for listening
Sure.
to this 60-second spot. So I think Adam's dead on, and Sam on this at backs thing. I think it's a great idea. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Does it make it into this generation of the next release? Probably not, but I think it's good times because people are starting now to pay attention. At Podcast Movement Evolutions, there were some Apple folks there, and I was saying, "Hey, I think we got these things, and maybe this feature would be something that would be awesome for us."
Mhm.
And you can't tell Apple what to do, but you can say, "Hey, this might be helpful," right?
Yeah.
And they'll go, "Oh, yeah, that's interesting." And that's about as far as they say. Then 2 years later, you get the feature if you're
Sure. Yeah.
lucky. And it was the same thing with transcripts, and, I think it's pretty publicly known that Ted was the one that really pushed it over there. But they 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 did transcripts really, really, really
Yes.
well. And I would actually they are scoring. So they're scoring the transcript I provide,
Mhm.
and if it doesn't score high enough, my understanding is that they may not surface it if it doesn't score high enough. So we have to really work on making sure we have really good quality transcripts if we're submitting them to
To Apple
Apple and
to
our
use.
yeah.
Mhm.
So don't go cheap on the engine that you use to create a transcript, and if you're in doubt, then just let them run theirs.
Yeah.
The
Well,
simple fact
and I mean, they do a great job. Their transcription, from what I've seen, is done a great job. I'm always providing my own SRT file for my transcripts, but at the same time, the ones that I have seen that I didn't do, like, is doing a great job.
it actually ignores I'm running pre-roll on the new media show,
Mhm.
and it doesn't start the transcript until that ad is done, and
Wow.
that's what blew me away. I'm like, "Wow, they ignored the ad. How did you guys do that?"
Yeah, for real.
Because that's a big complaint is syncing is off, and they basically that doesn't matter how that ad changes for every person, they know when I say welcome to Geek News Central or whatever my intro is, that's when the transcript syncs up and moves on. They know now I haven't checked to see if they ignore the GoDaddy spot mid-roll, but I'm assuming they probably do. But to me, that is brilliant. I'm like, "How did you guys
Yeah.
do that?" And Ted said, "Well, it was 10 years of tech," and I'm like, "I believe it."
Yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding, no kidding. Uh, anything else that you wanna promote here, well, before we get off the call?
Yeah, I just think it's a great time to be a podcaster, and people say that's pretty cliche, but if you look at the active number of shows, I think the last time I looked last week was 350,000 shows have updated in the last 30 days. There's 4 million shows in the inventory, but again, 350,000 active shows. I truly believe that someone that's sitting on the fence right now about creating a podcast needs to rethink that strategy immediately because it is the best time ever. And boy, at 19 years, I hate it. Again, it sounds cliche. This is the best time ever to become a podcaster if you're not podcasting already.
Right.
We're seeing overall just natural growth in shows that are, that really haven't seen a lot of growth. And the reason why is very, very simple. The listeners to podcasts have not went away. That audience is still there. It's still same amount. They maybe listen to a tighter number of shows, but they're also digging deeper, and
Mhm.
they're going deeper down the stack to find content that maybe was never discovered before. So great show titles, great metadata will all drive discovery, even if it's not in Apple Podcasts or Spouten or Spotify or wherever people are listening. That stuff will surface, and I just think that it's a great time, and a lot of people are worried, and we are too. The economy's flat, or the space is flat.
Mhm.
So we just have to keep adding value to the platform, and doing what we can to the best of our ability to grow shows. And if podcasters grow and get feedback, they're going to keep on podcasting. And not to say that, but that's going to keep us in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find you at?
Easy, Todd at blubrry.com, Blubrry without the E's, because we couldn't afford the E's. I think that right now that blubrry.com is like 2 million, BLUBRRY.com. So, Todd at blubrry.com. If anybody wants to buy that domain for us too, we'd gladly take that as a gift recipient for that purchase. But yeah, Todd at blubrry.com.
Well, thanks, Todd, for being on this show. Really appreciated hearing all about the stuff that you're doing with Blubrry PAI and the other features that you guys are implementing here at Blubrry. Guys, if you've not checked out Blubrry, like he said, it's blubrry.com without the E's, BLUBRRY. They are a hosting company, and they do a good job at what they do. And they're out there leading the way and being innovative with some of the stuff that they're doing and implementing. And so go check it out, guys. Have a great week and keep podcasting.